You see this shit? What the fuck did you think was gonna happen, bro? What did you think was gonna happen?
Hate speech.
What did you think was gonna happen?
No platform for hate
You wanted this, dude. What the fuck?
Hey, you get out of my city. Listen, you get out of my city now.
The immutable
I really don't like
characteristic
you.
is sex.
I think you
And
should get
by
out of
trying
my
to
city.
change that,
I think you should suck my metaphorical dick.
Choosing another identity and trying to promote that in law and in culture.
Nothing to see here, folks. No platform
Calls
for
for people to come and share ideas in a respectful way, in an insightful way, in a way that brings the weight of science. And,
By the way, trans lives matter.
Differing opinions to bear on an important discussion.
Trans and proud.
And that's not accomplished by simply shouting slogans or
but I'm a man.
shouting sound bites. It happens when people come together and have a conversation.
This kind of transphobic sentiment is directly responsible for the attacks on trans people that we see in our country today.
More and more of the trans community is committing suicide because of shit like this. The trans lives are under attack. What do we do?
Stand up, fight back.
The trans lives are under attack. What do we do?
Stand up, fight back.
The trans lives are under attack. What do we do?
Stand up, fight back.
Everyone is trying to paint, liberal college students as snowflakes that are afraid of this discourse and just want to shut everything down. So we wanted to present an alternative to that.
I'm not interested in debating intellectual racism or whether trans folks deserve to have their humanity and identities recognized.
The book is about how the white male upper class belongs there because of their genetic and moral superiorities. You cannot imagine it because that kind of thing can't be said.
United can never be defeated. The people united can never be defeated.
Different ideas, including ideas that I disagree with, should have a hearing on campuses. There should be serious engagement. But here we're talking about somebody who is promoting an outlook that undergirds hate speech. Free speech is speech that, where there is engagement over different ideas that, but they're not ideas that can be directly linked to violence against sections of people.
It gives justification to the more brute and violent character of people like Richard Spencer, for example. It justifies that in their minds. This rhetoric is in itself violence. It is declaration of an attack on a community, and I think communities have the right to defend themselves from that.
I am very against his message, but I think it is important to be around opinions that you disagree with in order to learn how to respond to them. But I know this is probably going to be very upsetting, but that's part of the reason why I wanted to go, to learn.
This type of opinion was popular enough to get Donald Trump elected, and so why is that? I think that this is a good jumping off point for understanding how hate speech is perpetuated.
I think it's up to students like me and the people who came to the event to privately host our own free speech event, privately critique and destroy the arguments of the other side. In an ideal world, it shouldn't be on us. That burden shouldn't be on us. We have enough people of color on this campus who every day are told in probably less explicit ways that they don't belong.
Hearing something every day doesn't mean you've heard it in every way. There's always room for more.
It was literally just keep turning the other cheek was the response. Literally telling me as a human being that for the sake of your false academic growth, or for the sake of this false dialogue that we're creating, that my existence needs to continuously be, I need to listen more and more and more to someone telling me that I don't deserve to exist.
People all over this country, people on this university value intellect and debate and discussion more than they value the lives and livelihoods of queer students and students of color. Private universities, places like Harvard, are also supposed to be a home. If this place doesn't feel like a home, it cannot then be an intellectual space.
So there's nothing wrong with the protests on the outside. What would be wrong is trying to shut voices down that require Socratic attention, that require intellectual accountability.
Most drugs are dosed in mg per kg. This is a therapeutic protein. It's recombinant.
Farmer greed kills.
Yes.
Farmer greed kills. Farmer greed kills. Farmer greed kills.
kills. Farmer greed kills.
The same be true with my trans folk, our precious trans folk. They live in a society, very much like black folk and others, where hatred and contempt coming at them all the time. So shutting down is not going to do it. Expressing a fundamental opposition to the hate and contempt, yes, that's what the protest is all about, very much so. But there's got to be somebody on the inside that's saying transphobia is as evil as white supremacy, male supremacy, anti-Arab, anti-Jewish, anti-Palestinian hatred. But it has to be in the context of a dialogue in which people might not even be aware. You've got to tease it out, put it on the table. These are the arguments we have. What are your counter-arguments?
The way to resist somebody whose speech one finds problematic is to show that you have better arguments. And I don't think that shouting people down does much for the state of the debate or for one's understanding of the issues. And on the Charles Murray issues, I do think that a lot of the critics haven't read him carefully, and in particular in the last few years he's been talking about his most recent book, which is Coming Apart, which if people read it, I think they'd have a better understanding of how Donald Trump ended up being elected president.
The argument that we shouldn't have these conversations would have you believe that this ideology will just sort of disappear by itself.
The idea that regulating what can be said is the way to deal with the hazard is nonsense, right? The hazard of what happened in Charlottesville is that we are at a point in history where those arguments begin to resonate. And we need to deal with the reason those things are resonating.
And, I'm sorry if some people feel hurt, but this is the world we live in, not the one that we want.
You just want to try to respect each and every one of us. You want to give us enough freedom so that we can choose to be vulnerable. We can muster the courage to give each other the benefit of being wrong as well as right. And even when we are wrong, that we can still stay in contact with each other's humanity and acknowledge that all of us stand in need of revision and correction at one time or another. And in doing that, maybe then we can continue the kind of collective journey in a quest for Veritas, recognizing that the condition of Veritas, the condition of truth, is to allow voices to be heard and allow suffering to speak.